Would like to call to order the August 6, 2018 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners work session. Welcome everyone. It's nice to have an almost full house tonight. First item on our agenda is approval of the work session agenda, which you all have before you, including the changes on page 133. Do I hear a motion to approve? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we move to discussion items. First up, we have discussion of the new courthouse entrances, and we're glad to have Roxanne Vanakoven with us to talk about that. And I think she has brought some folks with her as well.
I want to first thank each of the commissioners for allowing me to be here tonight and speak on behalf of the District Attorney's Office and speak for myself. This evening, I know there's been quite a bit of discussion about the new courthouse building, and we are still in the initial stages, so I think it's very important that we're heard before final decisions get made, so thank you for allowing me to be here. Seated behind me are 7 of my assistant district attorneys. I think it's nice for you to be able to kind of see who I believe is the last line of defense for the safety of our community. Most of these folks' goal is to be lifelong prosecutors, and they do an excellent job in our community making sure that the streets, the schools, and the county as a whole is safe. So I provided each of you commissioners with a packet of information, and that is a letter from each of the assistant district attorneys as well as myself kind of outlining why we have a little bit of a different view about the entrances that have been presented to you up to this point. And I'm going to try and just summarize. I'm not going to review in detail what you've already probably read, but you've seen from each of these individuals as well as myself that we are unique in the courthouse because we are the ones who point our finger at the criminal every day and tell the judge about their bad actions, about them breaking the law. We go on to tell the judge about all their prior bad deeds and their prior criminal convictions, and then we usually ask the judge not only to hold them accountable, but to punish them in a way that is suitable for our community. There isn't another person in the courtroom that does that. We stand there pointing our finger, figuratively speaking, at the criminal and ask the judge to punish them. And as such, we are at risk when it comes to parking next to them, walking in next to them, traveling to our cars to and from. And I outlined in my letter, which was at the front of your packet, that it makes us distinguishable from other courthouse personnel. But what you won't see in my packet is us asking to be treated differently than other courthouse personnel. We were asking for a separate entrance for all courthouse personnel. However, today I'm going to offer 2 alternatives to what I've seen to date. But I do want to just point out 2 other things that distinguishes us from others in the courthouse. And the second is that most criminals commit crimes because it's easy, and they're usually committed because there's opportunity. My folks go to great lengths to protect their private information. They don't use social media. Those with children don't ever put their children's face on social media. I'm very careful not to do that. Each of them could tell you their own personal story about how they've been followed to their car or accosted in a parking lot. I've received threats in my home mailbox. And so we are different. We're different than those that work in the courthouse because of the role that we must play in making sure that criminals are held accountable and people are punished when they break the law. So they commit crimes when it's opportune for them. So for us to be walking in with them or directly beside them or taking the same path of travel as them gives them greater opportunity to know our patterns, to know our vehicles, to know when we come and when we go. And the third thing I highlighted is that tensions run most high just before court and directly following court. And that's because usually those that have been charged with a crime are nervous or angry or upset. Many times if they've been put in jail and their family members are leaving the courtroom, tensions are even higher. Their girlfriends or their mothers or their cousins who came to court with them and just watched my folks point the finger and ask the judge to hold them accountable, they're more angry. And so that's when they would strike, coming in, going out. As a result of those things and the other things that I've included in these packets with real-life examples of assistant district attorneys being gunned down on their way into the courtroom, elected DAs being killed in their homes, other prosecutors being harassed or threatened, or their property, their cars being vandalized, are reasons we're asking that the county provide a second entrance. So just to summarize, I do want to give you one other example. I'm sure that you've heard about this last week or the week before. There was a patron to the courthouse. I'm not sure what he was there for, but he was very frustrated about the cell phone policy. And as a result, got in a physical altercation with one of the deputies and broke his nose right in the courthouse lobby directly beside security. Frustrated about the cell phone policy. Some people might be frustrated about that, but how much more frustrated do you think the criminal is or his family member is when their loved one or their friend just got locked up for 12 years? Or their loved one or their friend is coming into the building knowing that they're a habitual felon and they really got nothing to lose. So we're asking the county to protect us in the way that we've provided and protected the community day to day, hour to hour in the courtrooms. What I have seen presented most recently came from an attorney of our local bar that showed basically an entrance from two separate entrances, one for the public and one for courthouse staff. As I look at this map, it looks like the public would enter on Church Street and the attorney entrance and such would be on Corbin Avenue. And as I understand this proposal, we would come in one entrance, they would come in another, but we'd kind of go through the same security booth, perhaps on different sides, and then go down a separate hallway. So what I would be asking the county to consider, and yes, I understand there will be additional cost. I understand that. I understand that in this multi-million-dollar project, this cost, in my opinion, is de minimis when you compare it to the safety of those that work in the courthouse. But I would be asking for one of two things. Number one, that separate entrance for courthouse personnel be moved to the other side of the building, and a deputy man that entrance with or without, should you so choose, a portable metal detector, because it would not eat up additional square footage. It would still need to be manned, I believe, if everyone from the courthouse is entering that particular doorway. And the cost would be fixed for the security device, and I understand it would not be fixed for the annual salary of the additional deputy. But again, I believe in the grand scheme of this project over time, when you put a price tag on the safety of those entering the building, it's really fairly de minimis. So similar to this, separate entrance but around the other side of the building. If you look at where most of the courthouse personnel will be parking, it's going to be in that new parking deck behind two gals. So the route of travel of these people seated behind me, as well as others charged with crimes, would be the exact same coming in under the currently proposed plan. The public and the criminals we prosecute would pass by our entrance to get to their public entrance, which is kind of just an L-shaped differential. I'm not sure if you've all taken a look at that. I'm asking that be moved over to the other side of the building, and just not a full-blown security station like we have currently, but perhaps manned with one deputy and a movable or portable movable metal detector. In the alternative, and I know this will not be a popular request, but I'm still going to make it because I feel like it's my responsibility to my people, is if you feel that it's a necessity that this remain as it is and that courthouse personnel enter through this area on Corbin, then I would ask for special treatment for my folks. I'd ask that they be given a badge like we currently have and be able to just simply enter the building through a side door, perhaps on Means or somewhere on the other side of the building, and flash their badge and be able to come in. Why should they be able to have special treatment? Because they take an oath, as I do, to make sure that we uphold the Constitution, to make sure that we protect the people. And as an elected official, I'm very, very conscientious of the people that I hire, and I'm very conscientious of the risks that they're posed with when they come to work every day. I don't think this is going to be popular with other courthouse personnel because the DA's office would be getting special treatment, and I understand that. But any private attorney that goes to their office each day doesn't go through layers of security or have to enter the same way as everyone else coming into their office. And that building in that particular area where they place us is our office. It would not take up any additional square footage. The door will be there because there's going to have to be entrances and exits because of fire code. And it would, should you so choose, not need to necessarily be manned. We'd be given some kind of security device or code or whatever you think is appropriate to enter through that side or back door, as it were. So I have not seen other proposals other than the most recent one that came from our bar. I am offering these two alternatives simply for safety purposes. I don't like to ask for special treatment, but I also want to make sure that the county's money is used wisely. I don't want to eat up extra square footage. I've tried to think of every alternative to the contrary, but most importantly, I don't think you can put a price tag on the safety of the people that fight every day to protect you, to protect our county, to protect our streets. And so that's why I'm here today, is to present that to you. I won't belabor the point of the letters. I hope you do take the time to read them, because it's personal to these folks seated behind me. It's personal to me, because these are attorneys that I can't pay what they deserve because I'm on a budget from the state. But what they can have when they come to work that we also can't put a price tag on is peace of mind. And that's what I hope that you'll give them when you finalize the plans for this. My cell phone number, my office number is on the letter that I presented to you. If you have any follow-up questions, I'll be happy to answer that. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have right now.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Vanakoven?
Roxanne, thank you for all that you prepared, and thank all of your associates for working with you on that. It's a lot of reading. I did read it. And as for me, I don't see an issue with having a second entrance. As I told you that already, we have a second entrance now. But one of the things that I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is, if you read all of these things that you gave us, and most of these incidents were all taking place somewhere between where the person parked and where the victim was, which was outside of the courthouse. So what does a second entrance have to do to protect them from the courthouse to where the attack could take place? And that's what I don't understand. It's sort of like schools. Most of the school attacks on children is all from within the school, nothing from without. And it's the same way with the courthouse. There's nothing on the inside. Now, we did have the incident, a couple of weeks ago when the officer got his nose broke. And that was a new policy. I don't know much about other than what we read from the county manager and from the sheriff. But, and I think that there needs to be just a lighter level of security, at the second entrance. But, I mean, I've got a lot of things rolling around up there about all this, because it's just so much to take in, and it's a huge project.
Yeah.
But I'm anxious to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say, and that we can have a good, robust conversation about this, because this is something you're only going to do once. You can't go back and do it after you've got the courthouse built and say, well, we wish we had it, or we lose one of our valuable employees to an incident that we might somehow could have better prepared for.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we'll sort of pin something down here.
Lynn, to answer your question, outside of the courthouse versus inside of the courthouse, I think we've all understand the reality that you're not probably going to be able to provide secure parking for my entire lawyer staff. We understand that coming in. Would I like that? Absolutely. Would that solve almost all of these issues from my office's perspective? Yes. So if you want to give us all secure parking, then we can pack up and walk out at this point in time. But it goes back to just crime of opportunity and harassment and threats, whether it be physical or just verbal. You know, some of the characters that we deal with, the violence and just, they know us. They know who we are. They make comments to us, you know, out in the public. But I think having to walk in or them walk past where we are walking in just gives them greater opportunity to see where and when and how. And then beyond that, my assistant district attorneys are allowed to, and some do, and more will, carry weapons into the courthouse. And so habitual felon who really likes firearms and I are walking up Means or Cabarrus or Corbin together, and I'm wearing my gun on my hip, and we're about ready 10, 15 feet apart, they're not going to be stripped of that protection. And so I think that it is better safety overall. And yes, these incidents did happen outside. Many of them happened outside of the courthouse. But I almost feel like we're asking for it as we converge upon the same entrance or pretty close to the same entrance.
Okay, other questions?
I don't necessarily have any of Roxanne. I certainly understand where they're coming from. I guess it would be more to a staff level, and I don't know if this is the time or not the time, as to what the problem, I mean, so when I read the letters that came from these people, most of what they're saying is one staff member. But it's obviously not as simple as one staff member, because I believe if it were, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. Is that correct? Are you guys seeing it?
Are you talking about at multiple entrances?
Yes.
Other deputies there?
Right, in other words, to have the multiple entrances, one for them and one for the public. Is it as simple as a staff member?
I think in my conversations with the sheriff, and I think Chief Deputy Hunt's here as well, it was that the reason for the proposed design was because all of the security, all of the armed officers are in that area. If you start spreading them around, they had some concerns. But I'm not the expert, so if you want to ask them directly, or we can have the sheriff come in next time. Is Paul still here?
Yes, he's over there.
Yeah, would you feel comfortable talking there? Or you want to wait for the sheriff? The sheriff can come. The sheriff wasn't able to come, so, yeah, so he's out
I
of town.
can answer some questions possibly, I mean,
Yeah, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so I'm agreeable either way, but that's
okay.
I think that it seems so simple in the letters. We just need one staff person. Is it that simple?
One staff person won't get it. Just from doing staffing analysis over the years, you have posts identified, and it's going to take 2 to 3 officers to cover one post, because you have people that take vacation, people that call in sick, they're out for training and things like that. So it grows it a lot more than just that one. If you do that, you add one more position. That means more than one person. So you have to understand that, because we don't want to come, sorry, y'all are on your own, you just come in and out and do what you want to. I'm sure they would feel better if they had an officer there in case somebody decided to come in the door with them or whatever. And so you would, once you provide security in a certain area, you have always got to do it, because, the day that you're not able to provide it that day and something happens, then we've got a big issue.
But I guess the training for that position is going to be the training they already have. It's no
Right.
special training for that.
Right.
One of the things I failed to mention that kind of dovetails in with what he's saying is my folks will need access to the building on the weekends and after hours as well. And they're going to need to come into the building. So where they're going to be coming in, I'm not sure what this proposal would provide, but going back to one of my suggestions with the swipe card and the side entrance, there's going to be a door there, and they're going to need access on the weekends. We're not asking it be manned at that point in time, but if you trust us to come in on the weekends to do our job, then I feel like we should be able to come in during business hours through that same entranceway. And while I understand what Chief Hunt is saying, it would require more than one person. I think if you're really putting this on a balance sheet and you have one person at that location, it's going to be one person's full-time pay, and that might be Officer A today and Officer B tomorrow. But if they're full-time employees, they're going to have work to do somewhere else when they're not sitting there because someone's on vacation. So I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but it seems like if you're looking hour-to-hour pay, it's going to be one person getting paid for being at that particular location.
And I'm not a deputy. I don't have law enforcement experience or anything, but the thing that bothers me about the swipe is that the door has to close. And what if somebody what if you go in and go about your business, and before it closes, somebody gets a hand in there and gets in?
Yeah.
So that's the part. Now, weekends, I guess, I don't know what provisions are, if it's even that far in the works. There's Kyle. he may have an answer to that, but that's my concern about just the swipe. And maybe that's not a problem.
The sheriff did express to me that it would take 2 people to staff that, because he would not send an officer. An officer would be inside that secondary entrance, so that if something happened, an officer wouldn't leave and go out there alone and stranded, so it would be 2 officers. So it is two full-time positions. They're not going to send someone out there if someone is accosting one of the DAs or any of the staff. The thought process with putting it on Corbin, which is the sketch that Roxanne is talking about, which I sketched and those attorneys took a picture of that, what I sketched to try to send it out, was to share the security amenities of that main lobby. But the way the doors would operate is that outside door would be a swipe card, and that Corbin door would also be your weekend entrance, because we know that that's not just the DAs, there'd be other people going in there in the weekend. So we are aware that we have to provide an employee entrance that's not at the front public entrance. So the way that swipe card system would work is they would go in, they would swipe, that door would close behind them, and that command center is a large glass box. Part of it is looking one way, the other part is looking at the vestibule that the employee, whether it be a DA or courthouse staff, walks in to make sure that no one has piggybacked behind you, meaning that no one is standing behind you with a weapon or anything like that. At that point, you're accessed, your card reader will activate a second door, so basically like an airlock to trap them in there. So if someone did come in with that and grab that door as it closed and came in behind, there would not just be one, there would most likely be 4 officers that could get in there faster. That was the reason that we tried to share the secure amenities. The other part of the process is the way that we built the deck and where the stairwell is for the public puts you out basically across from the historic courthouse. It's the design of the flow to try to force the public to walk means on the west side or the left side of the historic courthouse, if you're looking at it from where the parking deck is, up and around, basically along Means where the Whataburger is, and wrap the building and go that way. So part of my idea for putting that employee entrance on Corbin was that, yes, while courthouse staff is parking in the parking deck and our citizens, public, is parking in the parking deck, when they come out of that area and cross that crosswalk right there by the historic courthouse monument, is the best way I can say is where it lands, staff takes an immediate right and goes down Corbin, and the public is going to that area where they'll be queued outside, especially on large court dates up Means. Now, that's putting a lot of faith that I can corral the public that way, and I do understand that. I completely understand that. But I also say that the Corbin side entrance offers a much more public view to our buildings, our cameras, and a lot more people watching than the other side does. So that was my thought process, is if that employees are entering, the best place for them to enter is where there is a lot of view of our other county entities, including the sheriff's department. So that was my thought process on putting it on that side.
You got the sketch? I mean, nobody has the sketches.
Yes, can you put that up?
Well, I guess the question I've got is, we have recently corralled a construction manager at risk, and the advantage of doing it that way is we get to walk hand in hand with them through the design process. So we now have an architect on board, we've got the construction manager on board. I can't remember, or tell us again exactly the timeline of where we are in sitting down and coming to an agreement or thinking about the design. I know we have, just like tonight, we've had some discussion about things that we could do or might do or whatever, but where are we on when we will actually have to, I mean, I guess, I don't think we're hashing this out today.
No.
So I guess I just want to know sort of where we are on the timeline of being ready to actually think about it. Because in all honesty, you clearly, by what you've just said, have thought through this quite a bit from a lot of different angles. Can't say that their request is unreasonable. I mean, you can't. So somehow, in all of that, we just need to mirror this and figure out, what the best course of action is, and which is going to take a little bit of time. So just kind of lay that out on where we are.
It's not that we can't go back and look at the design and putting an entrance on the other side of the building. It does, in fact, take up square footage, and it does take up secure pathways where they won't cross paths with other folks. It does take that up. It's not that we can't look at it. It's putting a second command center on the second side of the building and all the amenities that go along with it. So the computer screens that run the camera, all the extra conduits and everything like that, which is why I was trying to share the security amenities on one side while giving it a Church Street entrance and a Corbin entrance. That was specifically why I was doing that. The construction manager at risk won't predominantly be involved in this, and to give you an update, they're not under contract yet, and that would come in for pre-construction services for an initial contract, and then obviously later on down the line, we would enter a GMP contract once they give us that cost. The answer of where are we? The end of August, the beginning of September is when we'll start having stacking diagrams, which basically shows you a fit test of how big the courthouse is, how physically big it is, and what the extent of it, both on Church, means Corbin, meaning where it comes to, how big it is, and how it flows, predominantly the actual courtrooms. The first people to see that would be the county manager and then the commissioners. And then at that point, we had to sit down and flush all of the design out with all of the courthouse staff, DAs included.
And you said, what did you say, end of August?
End of August is when we'll just have a block stacking program. It'll be September before we can sit down and show where different departments will be maintained and how they're all access of elevators and all of that. Right now, we're having to play with the footprint to try to get the courtroom squeezed in a certain way that makes it work.
Right, okay. Well, and all of that, I guess my biggest fear is, and it happens all the time with big projects, and we may be swerving a little bit off of where these folks are, but you do all of that, you work hand in hand, they're putting pencil to paper, you're getting feedback, but there's some other entity that ultimately has to sign off on it. At least this happens when you do a school. This is a big project that this board has to sign off on. You get down, you find something that for some reason, we don't really want to do it that way, and then you're talking, oh, well, we're too far gone. And usually, it wouldn't be you saying that, it'd be the architect saying that. Oh, well, we can't really go backwards, we've done too much, and we've missed our opportunity to put our thumbprints on the project. And I guess I have trust and faith in what you've just laid out and getting this together, and it sounds like you're gonna get with the county manager first, and then it'll go out from there. But I just want to make sure that we've at least, it's making your job a lot harder, and trust me, I realize that. But we've got to be able to give some input along the way to make sure that the larger decisions are being made that impact the most people with the most input that this board can give you, knowing full well that really muddies up the water. But there's really no other way to do it, because it's I think, as Lynn said, I mean, nobody in this room will ever build another courthouse. I mean, it'll be here 60 years. So I guess I'm imploring you just to keep that in mind, to make sure that we at least have the opportunity to give the feedback that we want to give. Is that
We're not that, yeah, of course, and we're not that far where we can't change that up. Where we are going to be in about another month, we're going to be too far along to add more additional subgrade parking. So when you see a stacking diagram, that if we have a certain entity in the basement, that means if they're in the basement, that's not additional parking. And Roxanne is 100% correct. As of right now, what it would look like and what we're envisioning in terms of spot is not her entire staff. So when I bring that stacking program to you and tell you what's in the basement and tell you the number of spots, you can pretty much extrapolate, what we're talking about. But of course, even if we don't build a subgrade parking lot that houses all of the DA's office, again, an employee entrance would still be requested by the other entities that have mailed you and sent you letters and copied me on all of it. And that's why I've retained everything, and that all of that information, once I get the information that you have from Roxanne, is going to go to the actual architect so that they can read all of that. And they've been requesting it. I received one of the last ones today from a private attorney.
Ms. Van Goven, is this the drawing that you've been working off of, or is this different?
It's very similar. Mine is what the local bar kind of sent out. It's
Okay.
very similar, not exactly the same, but I think the representation of the two entrances is the same.
Okay.
Okay, other questions or comments?
Yes. I apologize for not calling you back. I want to say that I think you should have a separate entrance, not just for your department, but I was looking to see if Bill was here. When people visit the courtrooms and they're told how much they have to pay, they then go down to a different department, and sometimes they're not very happy there either. So which side it's on, I don't know the length of separation on the side here on Corbin. But on Traffic Ticket Friday, I would think that the majority of people are going to come up Corbin. I don't think the majority of people are going to walk between the two buildings. Whether that's where, I get what you're saying about Corbin being more visible, just cars driving by and everything else. But I think the tendency of the public is going to be to go to the current entrance and see a sign, because, you know, I'll say it, hopefully you don't have a huge number of repeat people every day, but I know you do. I'm making a joke. I prefer that I'm not a repeat visitor in your facility or your facility, but you're used to going to church to Union Street. So I think people are going to come out of the parking deck, they're going to go that way, and then they're going to go up the sidewalk, and then they're going to go right past where this entrance is. And none of your staff or any of the staff in the courthouse should be harassed for doing your job. So I'm in favor of, command center, you can look at computers from the other side of the building or another entrance in that same area. I mean, that's extra wiring, but I can have monitors set up so I'm able to monitor a second entrance when it comes to the command center area. I know it's not, your face isn't right there. I think the Sally Port idea is important, where you can only come in once and you can't get through the next door until the first door is shut and you're the only one in there. Those things are safeguards, but I do think that all the employees in the courthouse need to have a safe entrance, and that they need to know that when they come in at, I'm going to say a little bit before 8 to clock in, 7:30, whatever time it is, some people are already lined up for court, and they're going to be on both Corbin and Church Street, all the way around that building, because in their mind, I'm sure they feel like they're not going to come back very often either, but they want to fight whatever ticket they got or whatever. And we see it now. They go out, they come all the way around, they're coming all the way up this way, on some of your days. So I appreciate the sheriff's office and the difficulty in hiring people, but I think that we need to make sure that all the people in that building are protected as best we can. And that's a vulnerable situation. You're going through whatever to get your ID badge and everything else to make sure that you can get in safely, and you can only see so much at one time. So I support your efforts in coming up with a second entrance.
Thank you. Just to piggyback on that, Diane asked the question about, or made the comment about, if it was just the DA's office with the swipe badge. What I would envision is exactly what she was just mentioning, and we've talked about before, like two doors. One closes so nobody can piggyback off of you, and then you swipe to get into the building. Again, I know that's not going to be popular, but I'm trying to provide an alternative to what I currently see. I didn't realize the bar as a whole was going to be meeting and discussing this. We would have been there as part of the bar to share our input as well. But in any event, those are the two alternatives that I was able to think of.
And I understand the need and the desire for two entrances, so I don't have a problem with that. It's just how we work that out. But the other piece of it is, I was thinking more about your safety with the swipe. That's for safety, but then if somebody catches the door, your safety went downhill pretty quickly, So that's more what I was questioning, and that probably doesn't happen that often, but once is all it takes. So.
Sure. In our view, if you were to ask all of my ADAs sitting behind me, as much as we would like this to look public and everybody see, we'd rather sneak in a side door in the least public place, kind of like doctors do when they go into their office or employees do at a bank. They're typically not going in a highly visible front door. We'd prefer to be unseen. And I'm sure most courthouse personnel would feel the same way.
I guess that brings to my question, how is it currently handled, and how well does that work?
Currently, most attorneys, I mean, my staff enters through the kind of gated parking lot that we're provided, and they're very pleased and thankful for that. If we go somewhere for lunch and come back, sometimes they will enter on means. They'll swipe their badge and come in. I would say most defense attorneys probably come in on means, swipe their badge and come in. The clerks as well, I would say the majority of them are either coming in on means or I guess that's Corbin, the side entrances where they can swipe their badge and come in. It is not manned by any level of live deputy being at those entranceways. However, there are cameras that the command center can see the area. So essentially, that's how it works right now. And those are on totally opposite sides of the building from the public's entrance off of Union.
And how has that worked out?
Very well. Do people piggyback? Yes. Not off my folks, but I mean, sometimes we'll see people and we don't have any problem saying, wait a minute, are you supposed to be coming in this entrance or you're not allowed to come in this entrance? But does it happen? Probably sometimes. But I've got a pretty spunky staff and they'll certainly question people that aren't wearing a badge or have some kind of county credentials around their neck.
Right. So, in your opinion, this proposed plan is less desirable than what we currently have?
Yes.
And how many parking spaces does your office have in the secure, fenced parking area currently?
10. I have,
10.
Counting myself, there are 10 attorneys. I would never ask for my staff or even my administrative assistant to have one of those spots because this is about security. It's not about status. It's about security.
It's just for those people who go in and point their fingers at the criminals.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And so what's the proposed number of subterranean parking that we're talking about for this building?
15 to 20.
15 to 20?
And that's not because that's just the number we're pulling from, that's the space that's allowed underneath the building due to utilities and.
All your mechanicals,
All that.
all your intake will be down there.
Right.
So if we could move some other entities around, we could create some more, but it might be a little cost prohibitive.
Yeah,
Right.
and the challenge again is the building envelope that we have to work over there. It's a small site, so that's why some of the restrictions, it'd be great if we could put 40 spaces under there, and we just don't have the room, so.
So what I'm hearing you say, I think, is that rather than entering on Corbin, you would prefer entering somewhere in the vicinity of the current entrance that's on the mean side of the building, which that's kind of at the point where this new building is going to join the old building, isn't it?
Yes, to me, if I could circle a spot on this diagram, that's where I would circle it, is on the mean side, because it's far away from, and
Right.
it would be a different path of travel. As much as we would like to corral people, I mean, for the most part, it's going to be an impossible task, yeah.
So there's really virtually no way to eliminate the concern of walking from the parking deck the same way, even though, as Kyle pointed out, it's more convenient to go one way than the other, but there are multiple ways you can choose.
That's correct.
And I'll just say, before we came over here, my folks, we got in the conference room, it is unlikely they're going to park in that deck just because of safety reasons. I mean, they're just not going to do that. They'll find an alternative, and we've thought of about 6 different ideas. We don't like any of them, but we'd rather have that than put safety at risk.
Right. And on this diagram, and I think one of the things, as I've had some conversations about this, the way that I understood it was going to be and the way it is on this diagram, I've had 2 or 3 different ideas about how it was actually going to be. So this is very helpful. Looking at the space that this new building is going to be constructed, and I direct this to Kyle, how far down is this staff entrance? Like halfway or closer to where it joins the old courthouse?
Be where
or-
your, pretty much where your generator is right now, on the side of the building, so about 50 to 75 feet from the current staff entrance on Corbin.
Okay. Okay, that gets, so this COC mail, that's still a part of the new building?
No, that's actually in your courthouse annex right there.
Okay, okay, that's helpful. Well, I'm sure that we will have additional conversations. I think the one thing that's important, and I think Blake makes a very good point, that before we reach that point of, oh, it's too late, we're too far into it, I think everybody needs to be completely informed as to exactly where we are, so that we can have those conversations before some outside influence is saying, oh, you've waited too late or you've gone too far. So I'm glad we're having those conversations
Or
now.
the other flip side is, oh, we can do it, but it's gonna cost X, Y, Z.
Only $1 million more,
Yeah,
yeah.
that, we can't, the 5 of us don't wanna get to that spot.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
We will have some conversations with our architect and our CM at risk prior to your regular meeting, and we will come up with a schedule. This may mean you're going to have multiple meetings in between your regularly scheduled meetings,
Yeah,
so that we can make this work and keep it moving. So, and you guys will be aware of all those meetings.
this is a one-shot deal, so
Yeah,
that's
and we wanna get it
what
right, so.
takes to get it right. I think that's fine.
And-
We thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. I think I speak for all 5 of us that we would prefer to have you point your finger at us here rather than across the street. So thank you for coming and all your staff.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here, and we will quietly exit.
Great.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm sure in those meetings you'll include all the departments that are in the courthouse, in addition to the DAs.
The clerk of courts, Kyle's had conversations with them all
Yeah.
along.
But I mean, if you're going to have meetings to discuss any changes, they
Oh,
should be
sure.
involved.
Yeah, and they also
Just
took
to make
tours of
sure.
other prisons or jails all over the state here recently too, and that's where all these ideas are coming from.
I understand. I just want to make sure that they're all involved. I don't remember what the current guesstimate is. Do you have that
In terms of,
cost?
well, the CIP is showing 95 million, and that's hard and soft costs.
So for 95 million, we have to do it right, and we have to make sure our employees are safe. I'll say that for the last time, but I think, we're not for the last time, but I just think that's critical. I don't care which facility we have. That's very important for us to take care of our employees. In today's work environment, our employees are I think, are what's most important about Cabarrus County and what makes Cabarrus County such a good place to live.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that gives us a smooth flow into our next item, which is parking deck update.
Just wanted to give you a brief update on where we are in terms of the parking deck. If you could scroll down to the aerial. All right, so there's obviously been a lot of progress since then. Could you scroll just a little bit more? Thank you. So currently, at the end of this month, they'll be 3/4 of the way through the 3rd level of the deck. So as you drive by and what you see, that doesn't always mean that it's a deck that you could drive anything on. A lot of that is before the post tensions are pulled. So the way that you get the capacity or the engineering capability to drive on those concrete slabs is there's concrete stressed steel through them, and you have to pull those tight, and that's what gives you that capacity. So only 2 of those levels have been pulled like that so far. So as they start to move forward, you'll start to see them pull them, and you can see once you drive by, since I know a lot of you do, When the strands are hanging off of the building, it means they haven't been pulled yet. And when they're nubs, that means they've been pulled and crimped and cut and welded. So that kind of gives you an idea as you're driving by where they are. We've already started looking at the finishes for the different concrete stairwells in terms of the railing, in terms of what type of color will be painted on the edge of every step and what type of groove will be put in the concrete, since these stairwells are not temperature controlled, so you'll have issues during inclement weather. So we're looking very carefully at that and not just being compliant with ADA code, but trying to go a little bit above and beyond in terms of safety. What you will start seeing in the next few weeks is you'll start to see them leapfrogging in between brick, concrete, and steel. They've actually already started putting brick on one side, although it happens to be right where our intersection closure is, so you probably shouldn't be down there for any reason, but that we're going to start leapfrogging around all of that, so you'll start to see that take place. Concerning the intersection closure, the reason that intersection of Spring and Corbin has been closed for so long is that when we opened up the ground, there was a lot in there, a lot that isn't on your surveys and on your prints, and we've had to work very closely with the City of Concord to trying to find a way to get the stormwater, because that's why we were opening that up. We were basically putting in stormwater pipes because it used to just flow off that site. So we had to find ways to get stormwater pipes around a lot of the utilities that were already in there. And that's going to require us to change the elevation of an 8-inch water line. So that is what the holdup is right now. That's what we're having to do. The county is having to relocate or just change an elevation of a water line so that we can fit in some stormwater lines. And instead of a large stormwater line, which is what we had spec'd, we're going to go to 2 smaller ones to get the capacity and tie into the system. Are there any questions?
Kyle, we're going to regress just for a minute, because I've been thinking about this, since we've talking about you splitting the traffic, the foot traffic for the courthouse. You're saying you're wanting to direct the traffic to Means.
Yes.
Do we have a provision for the parking deck to split that at the elevator? Or will there be an elevator or just a stairwell?
You're required to have an elevator. We actually have 2, so
Okay.
if one goes down,
Well,
I have another one.
what I'm saying is on the upper right-hand corner, that's Corbin. And then, of course, Means is to the left and Spring. All right, the elevator or stairwell is going to be, where is it going to be in relations to that drawing right there?
You
Or
got a
that-
pointer?
Yeah. Okay, so your stairwell. Yeah, I don't think this one's
not
powerful
working.
enough to show.
Is it in the top center
is.
somewhere?
Yes,
It's
it's the
upper
top
left.
Yeah,
Top
upper
center.
left.
But
Yes.
it seems that now that we're sort of getting somewhere with the entrance to the courthouse being on Corbin, then rather than everybody going on Means, why don't it be, if it's not too late, that's what Blake said, you get too late into a project and then something else comes up. But what if, with signage and all of that, there's signage that directs court, people that's got to go to court, or for whatever reason, goes to the right and goes up Corbin and it stays on Corbin, and then the courthouse staff personnel go to the left and go up Means.
That-
You're dividing it, and that may give a
The
little,
proposal wasn't divided, but it was the other way around.
yeah.
It was staff go to the right, the visitors to the courthouse go to the left.
I think you'd be better served with a canopy for the people that are queuing outside the building on Church Street than you would on Corbin, which is why we're trying to direct traffic up.
Well,
foot
you know
traffic.
better about that, but just like in these letters that we received from all the people that were incidents that were injured for whatever reason there, people got mad, we don't want, obviously we don't want that. And so you want to, in my opinion, you need to try to keep the staff, the DAs and all that separate, as close to where they park, to the courthouse, from the people that's going to be attending court for whatever reason, traffic or criminal violations or whatever. They go this way, and the other ones go this way, and so there's a difference, there's a distance between them. And if we've got that type preparation for this now, other than what Mike said, I've got it backwards. But, you want your personnel to be the closest to the courthouse as they can be. make the distance shorter for them from where they park to get to the courthouse. So, and that's just my input. I don't know how far along we are on that, so.
I mean, I can work with the city to provide on, street signage, and we can have signage when you get out of the elevator vestibules or on the back of the door when you get down, tells you where to go. But ultimately, the reason for where we put the staff, where we put the public elevators and everything was because, quite frankly, that's the safest part to put any citizen, whether they work in our courthouse or not, is to put them right where we're putting them. Every traffic study that the City of Concord has done and everything that you look at is you don't want to be sending them to that intersection of Union and Corbin. So that's desperately what I was trying to avoid. In terms of where I think the public will go, I think you see a lot of people that meander around things that the county provides in terms of the historic courthouse fountain, the oak tree, all of that stuff where people sit and meander is why I think that the public foot traffic will go up Means and wrap around the building that way. It also provides you for some other options in terms of ways to cover people, not so much temperature-wise, but at least out of the rain in our heavy days of traffic court, which is what you get a lot of complaints about now, by wrapping it on Church Street and really creating the focus of the courthouse, governmental center, and the sheriff's admin, creating kind of that downtown governmental or judicial presence. I think that's important for, an identity of downtown, and make Union more of the commercial and retail, which, if I understand the downtown's plans correctly, a lot of what we're doing is facilitating that and being able to take away the front stairs, what are known now as the front steps of the courthouse, and open that throat of Union up and open that area up and allow us to do more things that show the aesthetics of downtown Concord. But is it too late to put an extra elevator in and do all that? Yes, in this project, it is too late.
Of the parking deck. not
Of the
building.
parking deck. Nothing is too late of the
Nothing
courthouse.
is, the building is, it's still a blank sheet of paper. So we're going to schedule a meeting probably before we leave here tonight. So I've talk about nothing but this building.
Okay, additional questions for Kyle? I have a couple that I'll ask you offline. They're just my own personal curiosity about understanding how all this stuff works.
Okay.
I went over there yesterday and looked at the construction, and then looked at the yard further on down Corbin where things are coiled up, and just created a lot of questions on how do they get those from there to there and get that uncoiled and all that kind of stuff. So, like I say, only personal curiosity, but it's really
Okay.
it's really shaping up over there and looking good. Okay. Next item, discussion of parking deck fees.
County manager had asked me to kind of come up with as much information as I could about if we would be charging fees in the new deck that is not built yet. We completed a survey of parking fees at several municipal and county-utilized parking decks throughout the state. Staff put an emphasis on surveying fees at parking decks that are utilized for courthouse parking. The information has been compiled in order to present potential fee options to the Board of Commissioners so staff can receive guidance and direction on potential fees for parking at the new parking deck once construction is complete. Now, I will first preface it by saying you've got a big packet of a lot of different cities that we looked at. We used a lot of Google Maps. We called a lot of people to try to find out what decks were used for courthouse parking, what were used for retail. It's really all over the board. We tried to take all of these sheets and kind of summarize them in a one-page summary, if you could scroll down. Thank you very much. So that kind of is the summary, if I could have anything of a takeaway from this. And the ones that we saw were a lot of the first hour is free parking, and then after that. And that allows some of the folks that are just getting in and getting out to do something, whether it be to visit the clerk of courts, whether it be to, go get a muffin or a cup of coffee, in and out and not charged. Obviously, as you move into the more populated municipalities, the fees go up considerably. And some of it was mind-boggling. We have met with some of these entities, and they have not just one division that handles parking decks and collecting the fees and managing them, but then they also contract those services out. So this can be as operationally impactful as we want it to be, or not so much. Now, part of the questions I can't answer is I have to get the system in to see exactly what it can do. But I know that we can charge any which way that we want to. And I know that we're going to have nesting areas for the city and for other folks. And I also know that it's our intent, myself and Todd Shanley, with ITS, that we will find a way for jurors to be, they'll park for free. So obviously, without the system being installed, that takes some time. So whatever the board chooses or whatever they advise staff to choose, nothing would be able to go live the day that we open up the deck. And that's what I've been maintaining for a while, is that I would urge the commissioners to allow us to open up the deck and see how the deck is being used in terms of sheer capacity before we start making these decisions. But I wanted to compile all this information because this could have a significant impact on your other surface lots in downtown Concord, which that number is shrinking, and it's not just because of us. It is going to be shrinking. I believe the city has some plans that is possibly going to shrink it, and I would imagine that would have an impact. And I certainly don't want to build a parking deck if nobody wants to use it, because we're charging. So I kind of feel like we've done all the homework to see what we can and what we should and what other folks are charging, but I think we need to see what the impact of people using that deck is.
We're not advocating one way or the other. The employees in this building do pay to park, have paid for 25 years, however long we've been in here, 28 years. Not saying that that means anything, but just to let you know that they do. The tracks or the conduits and everything will be in the facility if and when we're ready to do it, correct?
Yes.
So it doesn't mean you have to do it immediately. You can wait 5 years, 10 years, whatever you want to do, or you can start day one. So that's what we're just trying to get a little direction before they get too far along. Do we need to go ahead and start looking for whatever that system is going to be so that it can be ready fairly close to when it opens? Or we won't even include that in this project. We'll just leave it as is with the conduits in place to do it at a future date. So that's what we're trying to get some direction on.
You may have said, but say your ideal was how long to leave it and kind of monitor?
I mean, I think that anytime you open something up, you should get a 6 months glimpse at what it's doing.
6 months?
Yeah, it would also allow us, there'll be some significant ITS involvement because they'll be managing the system, so to speak, and then we'll have to obviously get finance involved because there'll be a cash auditing procedure of some sort because of the finances involved.
We would prefer the conversation take place that, yeah, we're going to do it 6 months or a year later, so it's not all of a sudden a surprise later on, that everybody is aware ahead of time that we are going to do this at some future date. If it's 2, 3, 4 years, don't worry about it, but if it's 6 months or a year, then we prefer you have that conversation up front.
Those are most of the questions I get, not so much when is it going to be ready, but how much am I going to have to pay to park there? And I consistently say the county has not made that decision yet, but we've compiled the data so that we can make that decision.
And who do you get those questions from, citizens or employees of the county?
Not so much employees of the county, employees of the courthouse, and then
Okay.
citizens also.
Okay.
Most just the citizens that I deal with around that site that I've worked with on coordinating the construction and where can they park from now on and things like that. I mean, we've impacted a good footprint down there of those folks. It's all on our property, I mean, but it still
Right.
has impacted them. I mean, understand that, you know, a lot of what those lots were provided for, those surface lots, was for courthouse parking, but that's not a majority of what was parking in there. It was a lot of that retail downtown. So that's probably where those questions come from.
I think if we were to open the parking deck and put up a sign that said, parking is free for the first 6 months, and then after 6 months, we made that decision, if that decision was that it was going to continue to be free, I bet you we wouldn't get any complaints. But,
I would agree, sir.
yeah. But if we just open it up and it's free, and then later on we start charging without warning, I think we might have some issues. You know, and I'm based on what you're describing, it sounds like there's lots of technology that can be employed. It's just like when I go park downtown Charlotte and eat in a restaurant, they hand me a ticket. And when I leave the parking deck, I stick it in and I get out for free.
Yes.
And I would assume we would have that same capability with
Yes.
jurors, and perhaps we may be in a position to offer that to merchants if they could purchase passes for their customers, if they wanted to make sure it was free for them. Is that? I'm
Yes,
not
I
saying
mean,
we should do that, I'm just asking about the
A
possibility.
voucher is a voucher, yes. We could
Yeah.
find a way for that to happen.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there's a lot of flexibility there.
The system that Messer has contracted with, there's no shortage of bells and whistles on it. It's just, what do we want to purchase in terms of the bells and whistles? Right now, I got the base bid in terms of put some things in there that can be some parking arms, and I can put them up and down in case of an emergency and things like that. All the bells and whistles, I need more direction in terms of how we're going with that. But yes, county manager is correct. I put conduit everywhere in that building, whether it's for cameras or data or phones or what have you. I put enough in there so that I don't have to core drill, because what I tried to talk about was those strands that are going through all that concrete. You can't not hit one of those if you try to do it. And the minute that we do that we would core drill or drill through that, you've taken away the structural capacity of that, meaning you've made the building unsafe. So that's why I had to put all of that in now, even not knowing what we were doing.
Additional questions or comments? Well, it sounds like we're going to have an opportunity to talk about this many more times.
Well, yes, I'd like to bring it back in front of you all in the next few months. I was hoping you'd have some time to digest some of those numbers and make a determination.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, discussion of remaining old Mount Pleasant Middle School parcel.
Yes, wanted to kind of provide an update of where we are in terms of that sale, and also more specifically, the 4-acre parcel that's left across the street, which is where the 3 ball fields are. So obviously, with the pending sale of the major parcel, which facilitated parking on the weekends and at nights for the games and the practices that take place at those 3 fields, we would lose that potential of that parking. Okay, so I don't know if any of you have gone out there on a Saturday and seen what occurs, but I'm trying to get ahead of this, and I kind of want to get an idea from the board of just how far ahead of this you would like me to get. With the pending sale, that would be revenue coming in. And we have a proposal from an engineer. We provided an RFQ from an engineer to go in there and look at, get us costs and do a 25% design, so to get us a real cost based on a 25% design of what it would be to build a parking lot where those tennis courts are, to facilitate that. And that would involve a bit of a traffic study, because that is a state road. I know it might not look like it now, and it might not be being treated like it. It might not being adhered to that, but it is. And there are some utilities involved if we were going to provide a turning lane there. Right now, you can probably fit 8 cars in there safely. They can just kind of park around the electrical service and things like that, but you can't really pull in and park. And this is what we would be looking at. But that's money to be spent out of the operating budget to do this analysis, to come up with this cost and this preliminary design, and I say 25% full construction drawings, to figure out if we want to do this, and then if the board wishes to use the revenues from the sale to do such.
We're actively looking for parking out in that area that we could potentially relocate these ball fields to. We've sort of committed that we wouldn't move those fields or take them down until we were able to replace them. So, do you want to go, what we're asking you, do we want to do a full-blown permanent parking lot at this location and commit to staying there? Or do we want to do something as temporary as we can until we make that decision?
Well, my thoughts are that we should do as little as we possibly can, knowing that we're not going to be there long. I mean, why should we spend $25,000, $30,000 or more, and then the cost of a parking lot, knowing we're not going to be there?
Well, we will still own the property after that.
Well,
There's been some potential interest in there, but then there's also interest from the town of the library wants to grow, the senior center is needing to enlarge or actually need to be replaced. Is that a potential site? I don't know. I'm just saying that we own the property already, but, so, you're exactly right. So we are looking for some parkland, and we're waiting on the land trust to the Common Lands to give us a price back for 50 to 100 acres on the south side of town. That could potentially be a new location to move those. Then we could use that money in the sale to go over there and maybe purchase that and start to build some ball fields. But again, this is going to be an expensive parking lot. So if it is, we're committing two things. We're either going to commit to those ball fields staying there, or we're going to commit that we're going to maybe use that for something else afterwards and still keep the parking lot in its current location.
So if we were to maximize the available property that's there with an additional parking lot, which is what you're talking about doing, using the property we already own.
Yeah, it's not actually an additional parking lot. I'd just call it a parking lot.
Right. Even, there still would be cars parked all up and down the road
Yes.
in both directions
Yes.
every time the fields were used.
Yes, and that basically, the way that's been described to me by the associations is that's because you've got so 6 teams are playing on 3 fields, but another 6 teams are showing up to warm up before they transfer on and off. So I won't tell you that it's always like that, but yes, it's in flux, and yes.
And that's while they're still using the old middle school parking lot.
Yes, but I don't know that it might be more convenient to park on the
On
road
the
and
road.
walk a less direction. I'm sure there's available lots at the school at times. You probably
Right.
just don't want to make that walk. But yes, at best, I mean, I'd like to eke 90 to 100 spots out of where that tennis court is and extending as much as I could, but that's going to be tight. It will be tight. And they're estimating, they tell me 150 to 175 cars at any given time.
So you really think that you can get 100 spots in that?
I think it's optimistic. I think I could spread it a little bit and we've walked the site and kind of looked at some swales that I could probably do some underground, stormwater to get it out and kind of extend a little bit over to get some extra spots in.
did you by chance get any estimated cost for that, Kyle?
No. Some of it, no, I did not.
Well, only
I have an
reason
idea,
yeah.
but no.
I mean,
Well, it's just like we're doing just repaving, like the repaving project up at A.L. Brown. It's what, $500,000 just for
Million.
repaving, $1 million. And so I don't know how many parking places that is, but I believe you could easily spend $500,000 plus for what you're just talking about, a parking place. And
If you end up with a significant turning lane and relocating utilities, yes, you could.
But
We could spend a substantial amount of money just on engineering. If this is going to be a 20-plus year parking lot, we already know that it's going to be a lot of money just for engineering. So if we think that's a property we won't use for 20-plus years, then we'll back down and do a more temporary lot, and there'll be a lot less engineering involved.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. If you think we're going to hold on to that property, this engineering study behooves us in the future when somebody comes and says, hey, do you think we could use that 4-acre lot for something? This would help me kind of determine that.
So when you do that, it's still, I think what I'm hearing, it's still not going to be enough parking without them parking up and down all the sides if you keep the ball fields there. If you went other place for the ball fields and looked at I'm sorry.
You could build enough parking spaces at the new location.
Right, at the new location, wherever that went, then you wouldn't have that issue. Then the old location, are you thinking that we then sell, or you would use it for like the library or
You
the?
could- All of those above, that would be something to consider. We have got interest in that parcel when we were going through the other process of selling for that. So we have interest in that parcel, but then also we have needs in that particular area as well for the future, so.
So with those needs, the parking we would probably still need, or?
Yeah, if we were going to use that for public use later on in the game, yes,
And the
this
parking
parking
lot
lot could
works
serve
either
that.
way.
That's correct, yes.
We're not there, I mean, that's not a long-term solution for ball fields, but what's a realistic timeline of being somewhere else? Because we did commit to, when we sold the property, hey, we're gonna at least leave them here for a little while, but, you know, the time frame of trying to identify a parcel, build fields, have funding, all that, I mean, how long, what's a realistic number? I guess I don't know what a realistic amount of time is for that. Is it,
Well,
I mean, it seems like it would take at least 5 years before we got to there. Yeah, okay.
Just because you're talking about not just the acquisition of the property, but improvements to get into the property and then having to build the ball fields, all the amenities that go, the parking and other bathrooms, everything that goes with it, establishing the grass, so yeah, 5
Yeah.
years.
So, that, I
And
mean,
then putting that into your CIP and adjusting other projects to be able to handle that.
well, I mean, I don't, if they're playing rec league ball there for the next 5 years, I mean, whatever parking they are using, that's not on the street, I mean, that's on the, if I heard you correctly, they're still using part of what we sold to park on.
Yes, it's still under, we
Well, that's-
retain that
and
property.
that's
They don't
going
own it
away.
yet. We still own that property.
Yeah, we've not, the sale's not
Yeah,
complete.
sale- yeah.
Right,
it's still
but I mean,
pending.
before we could get new ball fields done, that parking's going away. So
That's
then
right.
we're in the middle, so I don't know how we can't at least do something to provide some relief and some parking. If we're okaying them using the fields, we've got to provide some support for them, the parents and whoever that are coming out there. Now, it's kind of one of the things you got to do it as, I mean, you know, razor thin and tight as you can, knowing full well we're not going to be there for a long time, but I just don't know how we can continue to use it as it sort of becomes a shrinking spot. Anyway, that's just.
Along the lines of your question, if we're losing the parking from Mount Pleasant Middle School, is there discussion about retaining some of that parking after the property is sold in the form of a lease back or something to that effect?
There have been some initial discussions about possibly leasing some of those spots back, but again, it would be contingent on, to the point where those spots couldn't be leased because their work was moving forward, and you've got the other half of the population down there that wants that to happen really fast. So I think we're going down a path where even if we have it for some time, we're not going to have it for that long. We're not going to have it for the duration that you talked about. Not based on my understandings of what they're planning on doing there. Now, I might be wrong, and if you want us to go down that route and start to have those serious discussions, we can.
Won't, make sure I'm following you, we won't have the parking that they're currently using.
I don't think for that full 5 years,
That's
because
right.
you'd be.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so
Yeah,
either.
you'd be
There's no way.
maintaining that the
Yeah.
new
Some
owner
of
is
what
just
they
not going to
currently
change
use,
anything.
because
Well,
they
that-
park on the streets, they park all up and down Main Street, they park on both sides of Main Street, they park down the road going to the elementary school. So that parking is not going anywhere. It's just the piece, the part of the parking that's on the middle school proper site. And there's no painted lines in there, it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere, so.
Well, again, even if we know we can't provide to the full extent that we think is getting used, we still bear some responsibility providing, if we're okay in using the fields, we've got to provide what we can, in my opinion.
Well, I guess what we're asking, do you want us to do a curb and gutter parking lot, or do you want us to do the least amount that we can do legally and safely to provide parking spaces? And where we're talking about is currently a tennis court there. So one would be to remove the fences, put some lines on that tennis court, and park on the tennis court. The other would be to rip the tennis court up, put some gravel down, if it would meet their code. Or it would be actually to put in a small paved lot. It's a long spectrum. What we're asking is for some guidance. Do you want us to look at the most efficient way and safe way to make this happen on a temporary basis until we are able to figure out what we can do long-term with that piece of property?
What
I
you
choose
just said
option
is,
number
I was getting ready to say,
I'm right
Take
with
down
you,
the
Mike.
fence, put
When
some
you-
lines
yeah.
on the tennis court and park.
yeah, when you put it that way, okay. If the money was not an issue, this would be a much easier decision. But since we
As
don't have
true
a
of
crystal.
most everything
That's
in the
right.
world.
But
Yes.
since we have no crystal ball, I would agree with that
Okay.
scenario at this point in time. Unless you can give us, which I don't think you can without spending money, here's what it is for this and here's what it is for this. But either way,
There's not enough room on the parcel to keep the 3 ball fields and to do sufficient parking. They're just not. So we're trying to put a stopgap in there to get some more parking off the street and onto the site. There is no parking on the site now.
which
So-
that makes it sound like the ball fields need to move.
Correct.
And
as
then we
soon
need
as
to figure
possible.
out whether to keep that or to sell it and do
Correct.
something else.
Yes, correct.
I still don't have the crystal ball for that answer, but I do agree with Commissioner Morris.
You still seem a little
No,
confused.
but that's 5 years away. So in the interim, that painted tennis court is it's not gonna last 5 years.
It's asphalt, if I remember correctly. I don't know.
I guess I'm not advocating for the Taj Mahal of parking lots, but I just think we need to be, I'll back up and say, I'll trust Kyle's judgment. But it sounds like we need a traffic study, a little bit of storm drainage. It sounds like it's a little more to it than knocking the fence down and painting the parking lot.
I think
Yeah,
what I'm
I'm
hearing
not sure he wants to say it that way.
is
but-
that you want me to do this the most fiscally way responsible and also make it last 5 years. So it sounds to me like a compromise from just knocking the fence down and putting some stripes on there. It might, in fact, be that simple. But I would have to have an engineer look at some few legalities. That's the one thing everyone talks to, as long as it's legal and safe. Well, that's what my job is to make sure that it is. And I would, of course, make sure. But no, I would not go out and put curb and gutter there or anything if I could do some other things that
Right.
I felt confident would last 5 years. And I will say to the board that that's what I will move forward with if so instructed.
And that seems reasonable to me.
So do you have the direction that you desired?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you very much.
Good. Well, while you're at the table, since this seems to be the Kyle Billiford show today, the next item is yours as well, Historic Courthouse Clock Tower repairs.
Yes. This is really just a brief update because we're right on the cusp of kind of kicking off this project, but it's a much longer-term project, I think, than the commissioners might have had in mind when it all first started. We're in the process right now of entering an agreement with the Cabarrus Time Savers, and that agreement, and Tom Nunn, who runs our risk and contract department, we've been working on that, and then, of course, we will have our attorney review. It's actually a template that our attorney actually provided to us. But that agreement will be for the duration of 3 years, and that's why I wanted to come to the board tonight. Originally, I wasn't planning on discussing this, but after talking with the Cabarrus Time Savers, it could take up to 3 years to rebuild that clock. Worst-case scenario with having to actually recast and reform the actual parts. Because remember, again, this is to bring it back to literally how it would have been when it first came. So this isn't, making a stopgap out of aluminum and making something the way I would do to make it. This is like literally forming it so it has every exact groove and measurement that the original ones did. Now, my contact at the Cabarrus Time Savers does not feel that it will take 3 years, but out of worst-case scenario, that's what we're setting the contract term to. So I kind of wanted to give the board an update that we're looking at the end of August. County staff and the Cabarrus Time Savers will remove that clock and all its associated functions and equipment. And part of that clock will stay here in Cabarrus County, and part of that clock will go to Ohio. And that's where parts of it will be put together and recast, and the two entities will work together. And the entity out of Ohio is the same group that we worked with prior to the Cabarrus Time Savers ever presenting this to us. They are a reputable company, and we've had contracts with them in the past. So I just kind of wanted the board to have that understanding, that it could take that long for that thing to chime again and work. All of the parts of it. Some of the immediate parts might work before then. And obviously, once the clock comes out, it starts the county's, portion of this project, which is to bid out the repairs of the stairwell and structure that the clock sits on. And I'm not sure that any of you, Chairman Morris, I think you've kind of gone up there on the stairwell. So all of that needs to be ripped out and built to code and built structurally sound. And that's the county's responsibility to do that once everything is removed by Cabarrus Time Savers. But what I wanted you to know is while it might take us 4 months to get all the stairs working and everything, it could be another year or two before you see the clock come back.
What will be in place of the face of the clock when it's gone?
In the place of the actual, I believe they're going to be putting up blanks that have that same type of face, like a Lexan plexiglass. It just won't run. I mean, nothing runs right now.
Has anything changed in the process? The cost to the county is only the
Correct.
reinforcement of the stairwells and the tower? So that
Yes.
the clock can sit there, and that estimated cost is?
Yes, zero. The Cabarrus Time Savers are not, they're not charging us for all this. This is all, they're doing it completely.
They're
Kyle, he
building
was
the
asking
stairway and the
Our
restructure?
cost to redo the structural part.
What are they?
Yeah.
I have not received the bids yet, but we budgeted $90,000 in the operating budget of the Infrastructure and Asset Management Department for the project. And we also have the architect is already under contract. Those are all operating costs of IM.
Has the fundraising group, the nonprofit, have they started their fundraising?
They have, yes.
Kyle, one thing to remember, this is a little humor here, when we were in Monticello, earlier this year, I guess it was, wasn't it? We went in the Thomas Jefferson house, and there's an old clock in there like that. And it runs on weights as well. The weights go up 7-day weights, which is what this one was originally, I believe. And then at some point, it was
correct.
changed to motorized. But what they did, when they did the one at Monticello, was they didn't do the chains or something right. Anyway, they had to cut holes in the floor for the chains to go down through the floor. And I don't think that was intended, but I don't know, Blake, you wasn't there, was you there, Blake? I thought that was quite humorous because they hadn't made those type of arrangements when they were doing the prep for the clock. So whenever you do the prep for the clock, just know a little bit about the weights because they got to go so far,
We have the holes in our floors currently, and we will have them in the other ones, and we've already kind of figured out where those locations, the way we've designed it structurally is so that we can add those once they come in and size it correctly.
Yeah, that's good because that was pretty neat. We'd go down in the basement of the house, and there'd be Saturday and Sunday down there.
Yeah.
And the rest of the week would be above the floor. So anyway, a little humor.
Great project, good article in the Independent Tribune in the last couple of weeks about it. 3 to 5 years starting today is a lot quicker than 3 to 5 years starting next year. So, any other questions on the clock project? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we move now to discussion items for action at our August 20th meeting. First up, 4.1, request to reappropriate fiscal year 18 capital funding for Cabarrus County Schools. We're happy to have Kelly Klutz and Susan Fearington.
Kelly's here tonight to ask for the Cabarrus County Schools portion of the money that was left over in our operating fund budget for FY18 at the end of June. So I'll have her explain 2 projects that they want to carry forward to the new year.
The
The balance is $106,400. $100,000 is what you generously allocated to us for the Concord handrails. That project has been bid and awarded. Wonderful bids on those, so we saved some money there. But that, we would request that you carry over those funds so that we can continue that project. And then $6,400 left from the mobile unit allocation from the previous year. When you get down to about $6,400, is can't move another mobile unit. So we left those dollars for permits so that we could start the process early. So those permits have been issued and probably about ready to pay if they've not been paid yet, but would be soon. Are there any questions about those projects?
Any questions? Okay. Okay, then we move to item 4.2, funds requested for evaluation of Beverly Hills Elementary School site.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to read this letter from the Board of Education tonight. Do it just a little bit differently than what we normally do. I will read the letter, and then at the end of the completion of the letter, we'll ask for questions or comments. I will take those questions and comments back to our board chair. Our board chair has committed to getting you answers to your questions or comments by your next meeting, which is August the 20th. Okay? So as it's, would be the next document, please. Thank you. One more. Thank you. The Cabarrus County Board of Education voted on June 28, 2018 to approve a proposal regarding the future of Beverly Hills Elementary. One element of the proposal included that the Board of Education requests $20,000 to be considered by the county commissioners in their August meeting to begin an architectural and engineering review and site plan, high-level design and estimate for building a new facility on the current Beverly Hills site, with the design to achieve a minimum of 25% building core capacity growth for an approximate 500 student capacity, using the current NCDPI requirements for school construction or to meet the current building capacity and provide a space for other district functions or needs, such as a technology department. We respectfully request the allocation of $20,000 to the Board of Education to commission the study to start in January of 2019.
Okay, questions, commissioners? I think this is something that has been talked about, has been discussed in some of the public meetings. I personally would be in favor of spending this money. There have been an awful lot of questions that have come up about what is and is not possible or could not be done, and I think this is the way to get a professional evaluation to find out exactly what the possibilities are without any guessing or opinions involved. Anybody else have comments on that? I would propose actually that we move this to our consent agenda, if everyone agrees, but we can talk about that when we get ready to approve our agenda as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, approval of project ordinances and budget amendments related to schools, CIP-funded projects. Susan Fearington.
Last month, we brought before you the county projects for use of our capital reserve funding. This time, we're going to bring part of the school projects forward for a capital funding project from our capital reserve. So some of the items were the Hickory Ridge construction owners and technology infrastructure, and then also the some of the elementary school. Let me see if I get my list here. The Hickory Ridge Elementary construction owners, the technology infrastructure, and the contingency for the Hickory Ridge Elementary School, and the Performance Learning Center contingency, which are listed on the screen tonight. This does not complete all the costs for those two schools. Part of the money we will set aside and use in 2020 due to timing. So these are the amounts that will be needed within the fiscal year of 19 to continue the projects and keep them going forward. And as I stated, the money is in our capital reserve, and it was a part of your 2019 budget process. You had the projects that were in the book. This process gets our project ordinances all up to date and our budget amendments.
Questions for Ms. Farrington? Okay. We move to item 4.4 from Kannapolis City Schools, request to reappropriate fiscal year 18 capital funding. Mr. Crabtree is joining us. He snuck in the back of the room. I didn't see you here.
As with Cabarrus County Schools, Kannapolis has some little bit of money left over in the general fund. They had $85,000. Actually, they had a little bit more than that. They had completed their bus purchases, and it came in under budget by $4,771, and we'll be leaving that behind, and it'll fall into fund balance. So the only thing they're requesting to be brought forward is $85,000, which was part of their improvements for their McKnight Child Development. If you'll remember, a couple months ago, we initiated that process for making a match with $85,000 county funds. So if there's questions for Will.
Any questions?
I don't have a question on that, but I would ask about the parking lot. Is that moving on?
It is. We just had civil engineers that did core samples of the parking lots and the driveway this past week. They're so busy, it's taking this long to get them out on the site, so.
Well, that and this rain. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah. Will, did Rowan County commit the other half?
We've still got the 1.3, 1.4 on the board with Rowan County. We have not received an official approval yet, but we're still working with them on that one.
Okay, other questions? Okay, we move to item 4.5, Rowan Cabarrus Community College, request to reappropriate fiscal year 18 capital funding balance.
I did speak with Rowan Cabarrus, but their representative is not here, so I'll go ahead and do their portion. They had $30,000 left over from their capital funding from FY18, and towards, I would just let you know that during the budget process, they had a lot more money than that, and they got busy and spent it all, which is good. They completed some projects which we've been hanging on to for a couple years. So in the end, for FY18, they had $30,000, and that was for a forklift that has been ordered and just not received before June 30th. So they were requesting this money be brought forward so they can pay for the forklift. And that will complete all their projects from prior years and through FY18.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we move to item 4.6, Construction and Renovation Fund. Susan and Kyle again.
For this one, we had, every time that we make changes to our capital projects fund, we have to come back before you with budget amendments and project ordinances, and this is just same thing. We have the completion of the landfill convenience center funding, so that freed up $94,676.13 that will be available for other capital projects that we'll leave in the fund. But we also have a need to increase our Franklin restroom project by $197,911.04. So tonight, we are asking for the $197,911.04 increase in the Franklin restroom project to be increased on that project within the fund and the project ordinance. Also, and Kyle's here for questions about the restroom projects, but that will still leave us the $94,000 in available funds for other things that might pop up during the year. So there's.
What's causing the increase in the bathroom projects?
The construction market, and the biggest driver on site is the utilities, the sewer line. We have to go through the woods and around a lot of things to get it where it needs to go to gravity flow.
Right.
You've pretty much hit your capacity with trying to pump sewage around that facility. Because that's what happens now with Franklin Park. And
Right.
we've about tapped it out at this point.
Where are these bathrooms going?
They're calling them the lower lot restrooms, but this would be by your Philip Morris shelter. So if you know where your tennis courts are, it's the part below that. You can't even really see it when you drive into the park. It would probably facilitate one playground, 3 shelters, and a fair amount of people that access the walking and the amphitheater, I would say.
Currently, there's just a very small
Yes.
restroom.
Affectionately known as the lake restroom, and yes, that's one of the ones that we have to pump
Right.
And that's what we looked at, was trying to tap into that, and it just won't work. So this is about putting the sewer line in, and just FYI, as we add amenities, there's only a couple more spots in that park, despite how large it is. There's only a couple more spots that you can add large amenities. This sewer line is probably going to be the future of some of those amenities in terms of what we would tap onto, just lay of the land wise.
Right. Okay, questions? Okay, so we move now to item 4.7, approval of additional capital improvement projects identified after the budget process.
Good evening. So after we discussed, after the budget was adopted, we did identify a few CIP requests that we are proposing to begin implementation actually in FY19. So 3 of those projects being the Franklin Park playground replacement at $100,000, the EMS headquarters for initial planning and programming at $50,000, and then furniture and equipment purchases for the new Midland Library branch at $75,000, which was approved with FY19's budget. So I have Kyle up here to talk about any specifics of the project. I will say, sorry, that, so after, if we were to fund these projects, that would leave, we would fund them from the Capital Reserve Fund, and that would leave a balance of $509,592 left in the Capital Reserve Fund that shows as unallocated.
What would the 50,000 be again for the EMS?
Hiring an architect to look at what type of property, what size property we need to build, to buy, to go ahead and facilitate an EMS headquarters. And that's with getting away from the system they use now, which is all the little, EMS headquarters or all little EMS stations. This is about planning for the future of kind of what they do in different larger counties where all the vehicles come to that one spot. All of those vehicles are replenished and refueled and taken care of there, and then go amongst their ways.
So this would really replace, Station 1 would stay a station, but it would replace that as a headquarters. This would provide offices, training room, warehousing, restocking vehicles, and then ultimately, we will have the stations where we need them, and the rest of our vehicles would begin to need to add units to the fleet, would all be based out of here, but then mobile. So they would come in, stock, start their shift, but then move to different parts of the county and stage from different parts without having a fixed station. And it also allows us to, we've done some location analysis with EMS on where they need to be in the center of the county and accessible to the hospital and in a good proximity or accessible to all the different stations. But this allows us to find the best location and then determine how much acreage we need.
That's the biggest sticking point, is how big does the site need to be? Because one component is an immediate component, the headquarters, and then another component is what happens 10 to 15 years down the line when we're adding these units, and that's essentially what it becomes. And it's very much like a rental car location in terms of they bring you in, check you in, replenish you, and kind of go on your way. We've went around and looked at a couple of them.
And this would be a study or report that's going to be good for however long it takes us to get there.
Mm-hmm. So there is in the future in your CIP building this,
Right.
Of course, that is as funds are available, but this is our initial programming, working with our EMS staff and determining, just like we have with all these other studies, how much space we need for each component, how it could be constructed, and then help us do some initial site analysis for that.
Thank you.
Kyle, how far along are they coming on the library in Midland?
We have a meeting tomorrow morning with the town administrator to go over the most recent rendition that they've sent over for the renovations. And we met with our library director, and there's some questions and comments we have, but I think we're moving along pretty well.
Yeah, we've settled on space. It wasn't the original space that we looked at. Same building, but it just moved over, and it came back, it was a little small, so we've asked for some larger square footage or footprint. And they're working with the owner now to get that. So now we're looking at how is it going to lay out the suite itself? What's it going to look like? So as soon as we get that done, I think the town is ready to have them start construction on it. They're excited. we're excited, Emery's excited about making it happen, so we were trying to move it along as quickly as possible, but just got to make sure we get enough square footage that we can actually have a nice space down there that would be functionable for what we wanted to do. So.
I know when we were down there, we looked at the middle space, which was already being used for some type office, but the space that you're speaking about was the one on the far right of the building.
Actually, it's going back to the middle space now. It's not the one on the far right.
No, it is upfitting that. So
It's not the one on the
So
very
as you're
end of the
facing
building.
the space we looked at that was already finished, it would be newly finished space to the right of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct, yes. But it's not all the way to the end of the building.
No, it is just the front part of the building, but
Right.
where you saw that side door,
Right.
it would go back
Right.
beyond that a ways and would have its own new restrooms. And that was part of the deal, was working out how we could get men's and women's restrooms in this space, as well as a story reading area and storage and things we needed, but then the open stack area in the front.
Okay. And Kyle, will this 75,000, will that cover the cost of the books and just furniture and fixtures?
We have, you want to talk about that?
That is for furniture and fixtures, and there's a Canon grant that we've been holding for several years for $100,000 for the books.
Well, I'm sure they'd be glad to hear that. So
Yes.
that's great. Midland's going to be happy.
Yeah.
And I guess it's still on track for October, November, maybe?
It's going to be, yeah, they're going to do it, they're going to start as soon as we all agree on the space. They're ready to
Okay.
start, so I'm not quite sure what upfit time will be, but it'll be close to that, hopefully by the beginning of the year at least.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Had we not, in previous budgets, budgeted for this furniture and equipment
No.
and just not spent?
We've talked about it, and we did.
Never
No, we
actually-
had staffing in there for several years.
Okay, is that what it was?
But we never put the furniture in there, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Does that give us everything? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item, 4.8, AT&T new singular wireless lease extension.
So AT&T, or New Singular, is the lease is under, is an occupied space on our Mount Pleasant communications tower. You know, in addition to our own safety communications on that tower, we have done some leasing for private carriers there. And they are currently under a 10-year lease, which had a 5-year renewal in 2017. They would like to go ahead and, they've exercised that 5-year renewal, obviously, but now they would like to extend this another 20 years, or it would be 20 years in total, including this 5-year period. One of the things that has changed since they did that 10-year lease with us some time ago, or 2012, is the statutes have changed to allow up to 25 years. So, and they've asked for 20 years total. There is as you can see, escalator in this, so each 5 years there'll be an escalation in the rent we get. That money goes back into a fund that helps fund our own public safety, radio, and communications, as do all the other funds we receive on this tower for lease space. It does require that you adopt a resolution approving that lease, and then we would work through, of course, the details of that. And actually, Ms. Barr's already done the first review, and then we're adding, we've told them we're going to be adding some access requirements to that, because it is on a school site, so we're always careful how they access that, and going through the schools with the proper background checks and making sure that if they do have to do major work to the tower, that we schedule that at off times for the school.
So they will be paying just over $20,000 a year with an increase of 10% every year during the term of the lease?
Every 5 years, they'll increase that 10%.
Every 5 years, okay.
Is the 10% negotiable, or is that pretty standard?
That's been fairly standard in our, we can negotiate it.
Well, I mean,
if
it's.
that's what you'd like us to do.
Well, I'm doing some quick math in my head, but that's really less than in inflation. So at the end of the term, we're getting less than we're getting now.
It is interesting, in the first renewal option they sent me, they indicated this was a decrease in rent. This is actually an increase in rent from what they're currently paying us. This initial 5-year renewal would be an increase in rent. So they're going around almost all these carriers trying to decrease their cost. That seems to be the trend, and we do have a consultant we use to analyze these for us. But I'll go back to that consultant and see what she's seeing in the industry.
Certain they are trying to decrease their
They
costs. I'll let you know if I see a decrease in my bill.
I'll let you know if I see one in mine.
Yeah. No, it's a fair question to ask them. I think, I mean, you know, it's probably not worth hanging the deal up over, but the truth is, we're getting less then than we'd be getting now, and I think that at least it would be worth asking.
And a lot of this is how high they can go on the tower. We actually make more in rent on this tower because they can go higher than say the lease you approved for the standalone site that's off of 601. This is a higher monthly return.
The standalone site on 601, they were going to construct their own tower, or were they using ours?
They did construct their own
Their
tower.
own
That
tower.
site is constructed and in operation.
Right.
It is a tree, a lot taller than the trees around it, so you can't miss it.
Just for the record, I think those are horrendous looking. I think the tower looks better than the fake tree, so, for what it's worth.
I wish I had taken a picture in Tucson of two towers that look like saguaro cactus, and if you didn't know, they weren't that tall because it's flat there, at least around inside Tucson, and if you didn't know they weren't cacti, you would never have batted an eye. You would have thought it was just two natural plants growing on the side of the road.
So are you saying that those trees look that way here?
The trees here are much taller than the trees around it, and I agree with you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we move to item 4.9, reappropriation of funds for ongoing projects, grants, and commitments.
So similar to the school request that you heard, these are a list of county projects. I believe it's on page 74 of your agenda packet. That goes over FY18 projects submitted by our county departments that we are requesting to carry forward from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19. Many of these projects are tied to grants and donations, primarily received in our public safety departments, so the sheriff's office, EMS, and emergency management. I can go through all of them, or if anyone has any questions. We typically do this twice every year, so at the August work session, and then I will come back at the September work session, and we'll probably have some more to present from our human services departments.
Okay, questions for Kristen? Okay, they're pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
move to item 4.10, Energy Programs Outreach Plan, and we're happy to have Diane Gridley with us.
Thank you. I'm just going to take a little bit of your time today. What we have before you is our energy outreach plan that is due annually to the state. I'll give just a little brief explanation of the two programs that we're responsible for. We have a crisis intervention program, which we are currently operating. It runs from July through June, as long as we have funds. That's a program for individuals in crisis or have life-threatening situations, and that would be due to the lack of heating or cooling, or those that are in jeopardy of their services being cut off. And we also do look at the health of the individuals, and if not having services would place their life in jeopardy or create health issues. So for this program, benefits are up to $600, and the funding for this year was $604,000 for the crisis program. We also have the Low Energy Income Assistance Program, and that is a program that we operate 4 months out of the year. Applications begin in December, and they will continue through March as long as we have funds. The program there is, it's just open for anyone to come in and make an application, and a payment of anywhere from $200 to $300 or $400, if they are eligible, will be applied directly to their source of heat. And the plan is just to ensure that we have a good process for notifying the public of the programs that we have available, that we work with our community partners to have a strategic process in place to ensure that our partners are aware of the programs. They can also communicate to their recipients of the program eligibility. So what we will be working with Kasha and the communications department to get some materials together for that outreach.
Okay, questions for Diane? All right, we thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay, we move to item 4.11 from Human Resources, updates to personnel ordinance. We're happy to have Lundy Covington with us.
Thank you, Commissioners. We have a few updates we would request approval on for the personnel ordinance, and I'm just going to walk you through them briefly. You have the materials in your agenda packet, so if you have any questions, I'll be happy to go through those as well. The first item ties to our organization of personnel system, and specifically the definitions section. There were several changes that we're proposing in that area. Ladies, can you pull me to the sheet that has the track changes, maybe? I think that might be helpful if you have that version.
Might be in your supplemental.
While they're pulling, I'll keep talking through them briefly. So basically, the questions or the updates in this section had to do with some clarifications of our payroll system object codes, just trying to make things easier for our employees to understand and making sure it's a little clearer throughout the ordinance in various sections. So you'll notice on the screen, we've just updated and added some numbers to a couple of the definitions. There are a few brief changes, such as adding more detail about our part-time employees. We have two different types of part-time employees, greater than 1,000 hours, less than 1,000 hours. We also added a few new definitions, just different types of employee positions that were not defined in the ordinance, and those included appointed and elected boards. So those are basically the changes in that section, and then we carried through those new numerical changes with other sections, such as leaves of absence. So any questions on that section? I'm good to move on. The next area is Article 3, the pay plan, Section 3, and this is the section under use of salary ranges, and specifically our merit increase administration. So this is something that ties back to the salary study we did in the spring when we had Stephanie Oberg from the Employers Association come out and talk with us. And this is just trying to incorporate that recommendation into our current practices. This has to do with employees who have maxed out in their salary ranges, and the input from the Employers Association was a lot of employers do give employees in that situation a one-time lump sum pay that helps to reward or recognize the merit that they would have received. Unfortunately, in those cases, they're not receiving because they're maxed out. It doesn't add that money to the salary itself. It's just paid out as a one-time bonus. So we would request that be implemented for July. And any questions on that one? It's down at the very bottom, the red track changes. The next section is Article 3, the pay plan. This is Section 12, the Sheriff's Education Incentive Program. This section was also talked about in the salary study for the public safety group. It was also brought to you about 2 years ago, and we did some improvements at that point in time. So we're coming back at this point after having the new updates in practice. What we did at that point was to lock in a certain amount for an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree instead of awarding credit by class. That was a much better process for our payroll system, not having to make that many changes. But as we're going through this, we are seeing that that's a little bit of a challenge for our new Kronos timekeeping system. And we also, because we were looking at this section, did a study of nearby counties to understand what others are doing and to maintain competitive status with them. And we found that most of our competitive counties are not using a flat rate, they're using a percentage methodology. So again, based on feedback from the salary study, we would like to adopt that practice and do a 2.5% for those who either have or attain a degree, and a 5% for a bachelor's. And that would be consistent for people who are hired, where we can give that amount of credit, as well as our existing employees. And that was basically the feedback from the salary study, that we needed to be consistent on that. That item does have a cost to it, so I do want to mention that. We have approximately 86 employees who are currently receiving some type of educational incentive, and to move from the flat rate to the percentage, it would be an estimated $40,000. So any questions on that section? Again, we feel that's helpful to be competitive. The final area is Article 3, the pay plan, Section 15, bilingual incentive. This is another item that we brought to you around September of 17 as a new program. Since we've put it into effect, we've had a chance to examine it, and the challenge that we're having with this section right now ties more to what I would consider bilingual optional, or that's what the incentive is intended to cover, versus bilingual required. So we basically would like to add a little more detail in to split out the two types, to allow those who are required bilingual to have that amount awarded in their front pay or their base salary, and then to allow those where it's optional who are using that skill set to help their department or other areas to have that as a true incentive. The amount would be the same, it's just basically changing the type of pay percentage. We also added a few minor changes to simplify it, such as making the testing authority more generic if that should change in the future. So any questions on our proposed updates? Anything to add from the county manager perspective, since you guys have reviewed?
A lot of this we did talk about during the process of the salary studies. This is just cleaning it up and putting it into words and putting it into the actual ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We move now to item 4.12, surplus of historic items to historic courthouse.
So as we've been moving some of our offices with communications, and of course veterans moving to the creamery, and we've created a conference room meeting space on our first floor. You may remember some years ago we had a display case that included some items in there related to the discovery of gold in Cabarrus County and to Stephen Cabarrus himself. We don't know from an asset list or anything who actually owned those items, but they'd been in the display case and they were moved into an office, and when it came time to clean that office out, we were trying to determine the best place for these items, which we feel is historic Cabarrus, so they can be displayed for everyone to see. But since those are really owned by the county, we need them, bringing them here to ask you to declare them surplus so that we can do that. And then there's pictures of those items following this.
Has Historic Cabarrus said how they're going to be displayed or where?
They've expressed their interest in them, but I don't know how they'll display them, or I assume in their normal display space, which is limited, so I gotta imagine they would rotate just like everything else does.
That's with the limited space, that's why I was wondering. I didn't know if there was a reason why that couldn't be displayed at the library, somewhere in one of the library systems. As another option. I just think, I mean, you don't want to lose those, seem to be pretty important, and it'd be nice for them to be displayed somewhere and not, again, shuffled into storage.
We can ask them to give us more information on how they intend to display them, and then dependent on that, we may look at some alternatives and present those to you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we move to item 4.13, Planning and Development Home Program Ordinance. Glad to have Kelly Sifford.
Thank you. So this is a budget amendment request for the home program and the associated project ordinance. We received a payoff of $37,295 on a home that we had worked on previously. That money is required to be rolled back into the program. So this will put it back into the program and put it out there for the Prosperity Project, the Prosperity Ridge Project, which should be moving forward very shortly now.
Any questions for Kelly? So this is actually repairs that have been made and they're...
Yes, we put a deed of trust on the homes when
Gotcha.
we do the home program.
Right.
And so if that time expires, nothing happens. If they need to sell it or whatever, we get a portion of that back based on the time expended. So this came back to us.
Right. Okay.
Just one question, Kelly. How close are we getting to this project for the elderly housing project?
I hope we are moving fairly quickly within the next few weeks. There was an illness of a person that was kind of key to the project that delayed things a little further, but we have got all the issues worked out with addresses and all the other issues with money. So the project is moving forward. I hope to have some information to you within the next month or two about the closing date and groundbreaking ceremonies.
Yeah, because I remember we talked about this 2.5, 3 years ago or better, so we're carrying these funds, just putting them right in that prosperity fund.
Right. The initial, we didn't get funded the first year. The second year we got funded, and then with some changes in, I guess, the political environment potentially, views about what the tax burden or the tax process would be, the value of the tax credits sank versus what they had originally budgeted. So they had to get some gap funding to cover that, which they did. So all of this has taken, there's just different steps in the process. And then we got to the point of, okay, we have the gap funding, and then this person became ill. They have transferred I guess the CEO position to someone else, and that person's serving in a different capacity. So they're still there assisting with the project, but they've moved it on to someone else to handle. So we hopefully will be moving along in the next few months now. I think we see some light at the end of the tunnel now.
Well, that's good, because I know we just keep carrying it year to year to year to year. So I'm glad to see it get some traction now finally.
Yes,
Thank you.
me too.
Okay, any other questions for Kelly? Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we move to item 4.14, the Sheriff's Office, approved bid award for police interceptor vehicles. And we're happy to have Paul Hunt with us.
Hello again. We did a bid package request for our patrol vehicles for this year. We had 2 dealerships that did respond. The lower price came from Lonnie Cobb Ford out of Tennessee at $29,959 per vehicle, asking that we're going to get 13 vehicles at a price of $389,467. I know in the budget we asked for 14 vehicles. Ford is going to quit making the Taurus, so we're going to go ahead and start getting the Explorers. So the amount of money we had in the budget, we can get 13 of those, of the Explorers, and we'd like to move forward with that. Just was asking also to be able to, Ford's getting kind of tight with their vehicles, so you have to get in place to get your order. So the later you are, there's a better chance you have of not getting a vehicle, because I guess they have such a big request and demand for vehicles, they can just decide to make as many as they want and cut it off when they want to. So I was also going to ask tonight if any discussion you have, and at the end, if we could suspend the rules to be able to vote on this so we could go ahead and get these vehicles ordered. If y'all have any questions.
Questions, commissioners?
I do. I'd like to, an explanation. I don't know if our attorney or county manager who could do that. The difference in the 2 bids is $43.68 of using a dealership within the county versus going out of state. And I'm not saying anything against the one out of state, and I presume that the answer is going to be it's a bid process and we have to take the low bid. But I just would like an explanation of not being able to use a local business for such a minor difference, $546 difference. So I just like that because I think that's important.
Sure. The slightly higher priced one is in Kannapolis, and the slightly lower priced one is in Tennessee. And I believe the one we are going with is the Kannapolis one at the slight.
No, it's Tennessee.
It is the Tennessee one. Okay, so we have switched that since we had talked about this originally. Is that right?
No, it was all, Tennessee had the lowest price.
Okay.
From the beginning.
The statutes do allow for us to go with a higher price bid if there are other considerations. You do not have to go strictly by the lowest bid. You can determine the length of the contract, the process and, the hardship and getting, in this case, the vehicles here. So it does not have to be strictly the lowest price. I believe there was some discussion in this one of which one to go with, since they are within just a few $100s of each other, considering the 13 vehicles. And I think a timing was a consideration in this one. I think since the vehicles were in such short supply and high demand, timing played a large part in which one to go with. But to answer your question from a legal standpoint, a statutory standpoint, you are not limited in going with strictly the lowest price bid if there are other extenuating circumstances met.
Can I add to that also, if you don't mind? Myself and Tom Nunn did a lot of checking with the other dealership. We had the questions, of course, of, how long the vehicles would take to be here, which both dealerships is pretty much the same. It depends on Ford getting them out to the dealership. But my big concern was getting the vehicles to us. I'm not going to send officers up to Henderson, Tennessee to pick vehicles up, and I'm not going to pay any money to get it delivered. And everything that he was thrown, any question, anything else, they've already taken care of. He said it's all included in the price. And he's going to be able to get those vehicles to us with no additional charge. He'll take care of our permanent plate paperwork, everything, at no additional charge for any of that. And it's kind of strange. It almost sounds too good to be true, but everything we asked him that he thought we might, he might bring something, well, that might be a problem, or, it's going to cost extra to do that. That never came about.
Yeah. Mr. Nunn, our purchasing agents, had also contacted Guilford County, I believe. That's their other purchase and their other sale in North Carolina, and I believe one outside of Atlanta as well, with no issues at all. So all those other circumstances that we could judge them by, there are no issues with them. So it does come down to cost, and they were the low bidder. And we also talked to the School of Government, and the School of Government said you have no other options if everything is equal, except for you could release all bids and start over again. And they didn't advise that.
All right, I thought Katie just said we did not have to go with the low bid, and then you just said School of Government said if all things being equal, we do? Is that what you just said?
If all things are equal.
If there are other extenuating circumstances, you are not limited to just looking at the low bid amount. However, if there are no other extenuating circumstances, then yes, you are strictly limited to going with the low bid. In this particular case, it appeared at first that there might be some other extenuating circumstances with the timing of getting the vehicles and the back order of the vehicles due to the supply and demand of the vehicles. But it sounds like now this one is the Henderson, Tennessee dealership is able to get us the vehicles just as quickly, or if not quicker, than the Kannapolis one. So since those extenuating circumstances apparently are not met here, there's no other issue with timing the supply of the vehicles, then yes, you would be limited to just looking at the price in this particular circumstance.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I have a gut feeling that the distance of travel between 10 miles up the road versus how far is, where's this coming? Henderson? I don't know where Henderson is.
They're near Memphis.
Near Memphis, Tennessee. I'm going to tell you, we'll get $500 worth of damage on the vehicle from rocks coming up off the road. So
It is my understanding that they will be delivered right here to us in Cabarrus County, just like they're being delivered from Detroit on transporters or whatever.
And I wanted to make mention of this too, because there is a difference. There is a difference, Chief, you may have noticed this, on the estimated time for delivery. They both say 90 days, except for the Henderson says 90 to 150 days. Now, with the Hillbush saying approximately 90 days, how quick do you need these vehicles?
When Hillbush was contacted again by Mr. Nunn, it was over 90 days. He couldn't say.
Okay.
He said it could be an extended period of time. He was not sure.
So there again, they're significant then.
Right.
Yeah.
So are the extenuating circumstances defined by statute?
Not specifically
Well,
within the statute.
then I'll repeat, I think we'll get more damage with the cars being delivered from Memphis as opposed to Kannapolis to render that to be an extenuating circumstance.
Just so you'll know too, I didn't throw this in. They're not going to come from Memphis. He's going to drop ship them to a dealership in Valdez. So be up in the mountains, I guess, to where they drop ship the vehicles to from Detroit or wherever they're being made at.
You got to work with me here. I'm trying to figure out how to get
I know.
$546.
You know what? Every time, I mean, you throw a curveball, he still hits it out of the park. So that's what we've been faced with.
I think it is very clear that they have explored every possible avenue, because we would prefer to do business with a local Cabarrus County business. And that's why there have been calls to the School of Government and repeated calls back to the dealership, so yeah, this is not the first attempt at creating an extenuating, or finding an extenuating circumstance.
So why on page 111 does it say total $35,675? There's 111 on my document. It says Lonnie Cobb Ford, and it outlines base vehicle price and everything else, and then it's destination charge and.
Oh, that's the retail value of the vehicle. That's on both of them. That's the retail value. 35 is pretty much the retail, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I mean, we don't have anything from
Yeah, that's what the actual retail.
Hillbush
That's
saying,
that.
showing that. We have that from, all of this from them.
Well, on
but-
Hillbush, on the actual worksheet that they have that prints out the options and stuff, I think that's at the top of it, because I looked at that myself, and that's the actual manufacturer's suggested retail price, which, getting a fleet vehicle, you get a little bit of a discount off of that. That's where the $29,000 price comes from.
Hey, I just don't see that in this. I mean, I know what it says in the write-up, but I don't see those in the packet in what we have in front of us. I don't see that. I'm like him. I just think, I mean, for that amount of money, I'm trying to come up with some way to try to be local. I mean, if it were thousands of dollars, I wouldn't hesitate at all, but for $43.68 per vehicle, I agree with you about suspending the rules and get it in line, and I think delivery, the timeline probably on delivery is out of both controls, and it's just going to be up to Ford whenever we hit the list and they decide to ship them. And that's, both of them will get them shipped at the same time. I don't know anything about the dealership in business, but I don't know that one has more clout than the other in this particular incident based on what the product is. It's a matter of when they're available and everybody else in the country trying to get the vehicles too. It's just, I don't know, that one's being so close is just the I won't say problem, but it's most definitely a concern. Most other bids we've seen, there's enough of a difference that, you don't really worry so much, if you know what I mean, on who gets it. But.
Well, I guess the question that I have is, what would happen to the board if we decided that we didn't want to do it that way and do it the way we want to do it?
I don't know. I would have to research that and get back with you. If you went against statute and went with a bid that was technically over, the other bid, all else being equal, I would have to, the de minimis amount doesn't matter. Under the statute, it's the low bid, no matter the cost, if there are no other extenuating circumstance. But I would have to get back with you on the consequences to choosing a bid that was not the low bidder.
Sounds to me like you'd be getting close to getting that finger pointed at you that I talked about earlier.
Well, let's hope not, but, $42, $43 for 13 vehicles, this kind of money, I know when we were on the school board, when I was on the school board, Blake, you may remember, and even Liz as well, that we had bids a lot of times, and a lot of times we didn't take the lowest bid for different reasons. Things that the board members might have known about the bidder, or things that come up through a discovery or something like that. So, but looks like the chief has done his homework, and, there's nothing, and Tom, nothing really, but, I don't know, not that I want to do anything unlawful, never, intentionally anyway, but,
I will say when this first came up, I went over with the sheriff's office. Now, if there's a difference in contract date, if there's a difference in delivery date, if there's a difference, in any other attached fees, if you can find something, you don't have to go with the lowest bid. And I haven't been in close contact with them since then, but obviously they've done their homework after our initial discussion and have tried to find some other extenuating circumstance to go on other than just the lowest bid.
well, I know the chief and I talked a little earlier before the meeting this evening, because it was a question that I had as well, how can this be? And he was telling me, how many years have you bought from Hillblish?
No, the sheriff's office has bought from them for years, but I've been the chief for 15 years, so we pretty much, almost every year, they've gotten the vehicle bid.
Yeah. Well, I hope that we can come up with something that is statutorily legal.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules and take action on this tonight.
I will make the motion, although I understand where everyone's coming from and feel the same way, but if we delay this, I guess it delays you getting your vehicles.
Possibly, yes.
So I will move that we suspend the rules.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
I was
Yes.
chiming in for further discussion.
Okay, I'm
Briefly, but
sorry.
no, I want to just reiterate what Diane just said. I think the reason that we want to suspend the rules and do this is to make sure you guys get what you need. I'm more than happy, Mr. Shue, to make up a reason and stick our neck out there, but I'm not sure maybe this is the time or place to do it. And if we say, let's hold on, let's wait, let's look, I mean, it sounds like between the group of you looked as hard as you could look. So we don't want to hold up you guys getting the vehicles, but $546, I think we could probably find a reason if we looked hard enough. Well, I just said you looked hard and didn't find one, so, yeah, maybe that's about as far as we need to go.
If I thought we had not explored every potential avenue, I would not be in favor of going forward. And if I thought delaying it for 30 days would change anything, I would consider that as well. But for me personally, it doesn't appear that that's the case.
Let me ask one more question. The other option was that we asked was to decline all bids. and start over. What was Norma Houston's response to that?
I think you run the risk of the same scenario happening again. I think we could find ourselves behind the 8 ball the same way. And I think from the county's perspective, for lack of a better way of putting it, can look kind of squirrely if we tried to do that. But it is something to entertain that we could do legally.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to suspend the rules. Any further discussion? If there is none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. And now we would need a motion to either proceed with this bid or what other direction you might pursue.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the bid as presented.
All right, do I hear a second to that motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there additional discussion? I think we all have some reservations. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move now to item 4.15, 911 Emergency Telephone Fund Recording System Purchase and Budget Amendment. We're happy to have Ray Gilead and Susan Farrington to talk with us.
Yep. Good evening. We're looking for approval to upgrade and replace our current recording system, which is approximately 10 years old and has started over the last year, failing at certain points. We'd like to use Carolina Recording Solutions, which is the current vendor that we use out of Charlotte, and they maintenance our equipment. This recorder would, of course, record all of our 911 admin non-emergency telephone lines along with our emergency radio traffic. And with that, we currently do, with the new recorder, we currently do quality assurance that we have to go through 3 different systems the way we currently do it. But this new recorder would inline everything to where we could look with a telecommunicator, takes the call, loads it in the CAD, dispatches it over the radio in one place. So it would kind of speed up our process also in our quality assurance program. And this, the funding for this recorder would be out of our 911 emergency fund, which I believe there's a significant amount of funds in our fund balance to purchase this.
That's correct. With this purchase is $151,000. That would still leave them a fund balance of over about $357,000 in their fund balance. So there are funds available to be able to purchase the equipment.
Okay, questions, commissioners? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we move now to item 4.16, approval of tax-exempt bond financing for Carolina International School. And is Katie going to talk with us about that?
You want to do it, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, I didn't see this one.
Okay, this was one that was added at the end. This is the Carolina International School. They've done this before. Of course, this is no funds coming from the county, but they have to go through the county, and the county has to approve them to go out for tax-exempt bond financing. So they have asked us to put it on your agenda and to suspend the rules because they need to meet a deadline. Let me make sure I'm getting this right here. Motion to set public hearing on behalf, yeah, they have to have a public hearing on August the 20th. Again,
Okay.
This is no county funding. This is all through the school, but they are required through their process to go through the county to get funding or to get a permission to do so.
And we have done this many times before for this one and others as well.
That's correct.
Any other questions? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and I would now entertain a motion to set a public hearing on behalf of Carolina International School for the Board of Commissioners regular meeting on Monday, August 20th at 6:30 PM or as soon thereafter as persons may be heard. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next item, 4.17, resolution amending the Board of Commissioners 2018 meeting schedule. And Lauren will update us on that.
Yeah, this is just to add our next two summits to our meeting schedule, so that they will be September the 12th and December the 12th, to add those to your regular meeting schedules.
Okay.
Both of these, one will be hosted and by City of Concord, and also the second one would be, or the final one would be hosted by the City of Kannapolis, and they will both be at their locations.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, then we move now to the approval of the regular meeting agenda, which you all have before you. As I had mentioned earlier, I would propose that we move item G5 to the consent agenda F17, if that is agreeable to the board. Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, ma'am.
For the county manager, there was a comment made earlier about the $100,000 for railing, I believe, and the bids were coming in lower than good. I won't say lower, good. I don't know what that means.
I'm not sure either.
But if good is $20,000 or thereabouts, could that money be used towards this?
Towards?
This $20,000 for, I'm not saying to delay Beverly Hills, but if there were funds left over,
Sure.
if the bids are good
Yeah.
and quantified,
If you are telling us that we pay on invoice for those handrails? then we
I'm
pay
just
them.
asking, I don't know the answer, I only know good, and
That's the first I've heard that as well.
I'm just saying that would be a different.
Sure.
The budget's very tight this year in
Right.
a lot of areas. I think the study is perfectly fine to move forward with,
Mhm.
but if there's funds out there that would be coming back to us, then you might be able to, you're going to tell me it's in the wrong pocket or something. I don't
You're
know.
good, you're good.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And that's a great idea.
I'm not trying to be
That was the first
confusing.
I heard too, that was coming in good. So what about if if there are funds left over from the handrails project, then I'm able to use that to pay for the Beverly Hills study and not take so much out of the commissioner's contingency? If you give me permission to do that, then I will make the appropriate budget amendments and then arrange them when we get the actuals in. Because right now, we're going to go ahead and allocate the whole $100,000 into the school capital projects fund, but when the bills come in for the handrails, if there's money left over, I will not have to take as much out of the commissioner's contingency to pay for the Beverly Hills study. Is that agreeable?
That was where I was getting.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I would suggest. I don't
Okay.
know what
We
anybody
agree.
else thinks, but that's what I would suggest to, nothing ever comes in perfect round dollar amounts. So, where there's monies available, I think it's appropriate to, it's all staying with Cabarrus County Schools, it's not leaving them.
That's right. Great
So,
idea. Thank
and
you.
who knows what will happen during the next 11 months of this fiscal year and where funds will be needed.
But that additional, the savings on those handrails from Concord High School would have come back to us anyway, correct?
Yes. It'll be a little bit tricky between the funds.
It's a matter of
because-
switching pockets.
Switching pockets.
Right.
It can be done.
Okay, okay. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. Motion passes. We do have need of a closed session tonight, So at this time, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation, economic development, and acquisition of property per North Carolina General Statute 143, 318, 11, A, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That motion passes, and we are now in closed session. Thank you.